Welcome back to the potting shed on this cold January morning. I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year, and I'd just like to start by apologising for the lack of videos recently. It's generally down to the weather. It's freezing here in the UK. It's currently about -4 degrees Celsius, and it's just a bit chilly to be out and about doing potting shed related things. But I wanted to make today a spring flower arrangement. I've got some hyacinths from my local garden centre, and for me there's nothing nicer than having the scent of flowers in the house. It's just lovely, and it cheers the place up when everything is dull and dead in the garden and around. There's no leaves on the trees, there's no general colour around, so getting some flowers in the house is lovely. So it's something I like to do every year, and I thought I might take you along with me and give you some ideas of what you could do at home as well. So let's get stuck in, shall we? I'm using today a pack of hyacinths which look a little bit like that. These are flowering bulbs, and you can buy them individually or in packs like this, and I've got two colours to mess around with. I've got these lovely pink ones, and somewhere behind me I've got some white flowering hyacinths as well, and these smell amazing when they're in full flower. They really do absolutely fill a room with scent, and I love that. So for a relatively small amount of money, probably about £1 a bulb, so I don't know, whatever that is, more or less $1 a bulb, you can make a nice arrangement. It's a fun thing to do. You can be creative with it, and you also get the benefit of the flowers and watching the bulbs grow in the coming weeks. So what are we going to put them in? So you've got options. You can buy them ready-made in displays, but they're going to cost you a lot more. If you buy the individual bulbs, you can use maybe containers that you already have, or you can buy containers. You can do whatever you like. You can plant them outside in your garden if you like, but I like to keep them in pots inside just so I can enjoy them in the house and enjoy the scent and watch them grow. They're likely to grow quicker and flower quicker inside with the heat of the house. The warmer the ambient temperature is, the faster they're going to grow. So let's have a look at some ideas for some pots. Something I really like to put spring bulbs in are these sorts of terracotta pots. I think they look really nice in these. You can be quite creative with this type of pot. Sorry, I haven't cleaned it. It needs a bit of a wipe around to get the green and the watermarks off it. But I think these are really nice as a centerpiece for a table, and you can really get a nice look with these. So these are one of my favorites. You can get bowls as well in the same way, terracotta bowls. You've got deeper pots, although they don't really need the depth of soil, but if you like that look, you can use those. Any general decorative pot you can use. I've got one of these that I use an inner pot with. You can fill this up. These are also nicer for smaller amounts, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 at a push, but you can't get as many in the bigger bowls like the terracotta ones. I've got something like this which is quite decorative. I think this looks really good with something like daffodils, where you can make use of the height. Maybe some smaller daffodils like tete-a-tete, I think, are the smaller versions. There are various different miniature versions of daffodils, so whilst you're there, you don't have to stick to hyacinth. Daffodils don't have the best scent generally, but if you just want something decorative, a taller pot I think lends itself to a taller looking slender flower like a daffodil. But you can do whatever you like. That's the fun thing. You can be quite creative with this. So there are a few ideas for bowls and pots. So what else can we do with this? So you can also use a top dressing. It's quite popular to use sphagnum moss as a top dressing. I've got some here. It looks a bit like this. It's literally just moss, and you put it around the bowl to give it a decorative look You can also use something like gravel, horticultural grit to put in between the bowls. Anything you like. Once again, you can be quite creative, but there are various different things you can use. I've also got some coloured gravel here as well from other projects in the past. So that's just literally white. I don't know if it's quartz or some sort of mica or something like that. But you could, for example, match up a pot with the top dressing and make something interesting like that. Generally, where you buy the bulbs, if it's a garden centre, there will be lots of options for sphagnum moss horticultural grit and some of the more decorative coloured grits as well. So you can really enjoy yourself with that process and even try out a few different things to see what you like. Alrighty, so let's get started with this nice big dish. This is my favourite shape. So in terms of soil, you can use anything really, but something fairly fibrous is generally the way to go. You can get a good idea by looking at what the bulbs are already planted into, and you will often find this very fibrous type of soil that is got plenty of matter, organic matter in there. I imagine you'll probably find coir, coconut husks, and various different things like that in these type of pots. That's the best thing to go for. But to be honest with you, anything you've got is going to be absolutely fine. This is a temporary thing. Don't forget, you're putting the bulbs somewhere that it just needs to get its roots down so it can suck up some moisture. It's there to enjoy the flowers, and you're going to take them out after they've finished flowering, and you can either keep them for next year in a potting shed or somewhere out of the way, or you can just throw them away. They are cheap enough. What will happen over the years, each time they reflower, they'll have less and less flowers because the energy is actually kept in the bulb. So there is already the energy for this season's flowering in the bulb itself. So they're going to be their best this year, and it will diminish in concurrent years unless you really spend some time feeding it up in the season where it's not flowering. It's an awful lot of work for the sake of a few pounds to buy some more, but you could plant them out in the garden and just let them do whatever they want and see how they go for next year. That's no problem. But generally, myself personally, I'm not that organized enough to keep track of all the different bulbs and labeling them, knowing which ones are which, when they're going to be coming back into the house and this, that and the other. So I sometimes plant them in the garden and just leave them to their own devices, and if they flower the next year, that's great. If they don't, nothing lost. So obviously with a bowl like this, it's got a big drainage hole. Because I'm going to have it in the house, I'm going to try and block that. I don't really want water to flow through that. I don't want it to flood out onto any furniture that I have. I want to slow that down if I can. So I'm just going to block that hole. Normally I talk about the importance of allowing water to flow through, but that's generally with house plants that are they're in a long-term situation where you want the roots to get the best hydration, not overwatered, not underwatered. This is a temporary situation. A lot of what the plant needs it already has in the bulbs. We are literally keeping the soil moist is all we need to do here. So we can afford to water it a little bit less, just check the soil and keep it moist. That's all we really need to do. So I've just got a jam jar lid that I've literally just found over there. So I'm just going to cover it up with that, and the weight of the soil will keep that on top. It's not gonna stop all of the water, which is fine. I'm still gonna need something underneath here, a drip tray or something if I'm gonna put it on some wood furniture or something like that, or just take this to the sink and water it in the sink once a week, twice a week, whatever it takes. Leave it in the sink for half an hour or so to let the water out, and then put it back where you want it. But I would never put it on anything that you're not prepared to get a little damp, because there's always a chance of a little bit of moisture coming out the bottom. So put it on something to make sure that doesn't happen. So I've got some soil here that's just been in here for a while. It's already been used, but what I want to do is take up a lot of the space in the pot just to fill up some space. So quite happy to reuse this. That's taken up a lot of the space in the pot now. It doesn't seem to me like much point in filling up a pot like this with fresh potting compost when it's barely going to get used. Put some fresh in at the top, but ultimately it just needs something. The bulbs aren't going to benefit from the extra food in fresh and new potting compost for the reasons I've already said. The bulbs hold the energy, and it's literally going to be flowering in the next coming weeks. There won't be enough time for it to take up nutrients and make better flowers. The flowers will flower depending on how it was treated last year. So I've got some general purpose potting compost here just to add a little bit more water retention. Just going to mix that in. So now it's time to plant the bulbs, and if you're buying them already planted in soil like this, it's always useful to pay attention to the depth that they have been planted into. So this will give you a good idea at the depth they want to go back into. If you're buying them loose and they haven't sprouted like this yet, then generally you want them a few inches down to encourage strong shoots to come out and find the light. If they've already started sprouting, they're already used to the light, and you can plant them more or less level with the soil. One other thing to note, apparently hyacinth bulbs can be irritating to the skin, so you might want to wear gloves when you handle the bulbs. I generally don't bother, but it's well worth mentioning it if you have sensitive skin, if you've got cuts, or generally it's good practice. So I've got some gloves in here, so I think I'll do that just for good measure. Actually, I'm just taking these bulbs out of this pot. It's quite a deep pot, and I think they've been grown in here for a while. There's a lot of root already in with these particular plants. I don't really want to disturb them now because I think I'm going to damage a lot of the roots by taking them out of this pot. And given the fact that they'll be flowering relatively soon, I think what I'll do for these ones is just leave them in this pot. It's not the most attractive pot. Maybe I can find an outer pot to put them in, but ultimately I don't want to slow the bulbs down, knock them back, so to speak, from growing healthily and strongly, and I will undoubtedly hurt the roots by pulling out so many roots. So we'll leave these ones for now in this pot. These ones are in their own individual trays. It's going to be a lot easier to get them out, and there's going to be a lot less root. There we are, that's the individual one. And as you can see, they've been in there a little while as well, and the roots have spun round in a circle, but it does mean that the roots are relatively shallow, which is handy for our purposes. Just going to dig a little space for one here. As I say, try not to disturb the roots too much. Also, be careful of the growing tip. If you damage this growing tip, you could completely damage the bulb itself. This is where all the flower is coming out of. Even now you can just see the tip of the flower coming out. It's going to grow up and like this. So just be careful, hold it by the base of the bulb, and just be a little bit careful as you're removing it and as you're planting it. Generally, if you've got pots like this, you can push up from the base. There's usually holes in the base to allow you to push with your finger, and that loosens the plant from the pot like that. And as you can see, there's a lot less roots on this one. I'll take these gloves off now. Not much of a glove person when I'm potting stuff. So there we are. You could just leave them like that, which I think looks perfectly nice, but you can also use sphagnum moss just to add a little bit of texture and a little bit of interest. Where have I put it? Down here I've got, there we have sphagnum moss. This is actually from a reptile shop just because it was cheap when I happened to be in there for something else, so I picked it up. You can get bigger bags from garden centres, probably better value as well. So I'm just working it around the bulbs to sit on the top of the soil. It's not really doing a huge amount other than adding some interest to the pot. Just be aware this is quite damp stuff, so don't have it packed too tightly around the base of the bulb for the same reason. You don't want the bulbs to get too damp and rot. And there we have it. That's the finished article for this one. I'm just going to wipe around the outside edge with a cloth just to clean it up because it's a little bit dirty and green where it's been sat in the potting shed. But that is going to be the centerpiece for my table, and once the flowers grow up and fill the living space with scent, I'll give you an update and show you how we're going. But that's a simple project you can do in the cold January and February months that will give you something to look forward to, something to watch on a daily basis. These really do, once you bring them inside, give them a little water, they really do crack on quite quickly, and you can enjoy the anticipation of the flowers to come. Now, in terms of watering, just a case of keeping the soil moist. If you've got something on top like this, some grit or whatever, just get your finger down in the soil and see what it's like. Like I said, give it a good water, let it come out the bottom of the pot, and then leave it for maybe a week, depending on how warm your house is. You're going to want to put this in a sunny position if you can. What you can do is find a sunny spot for these to get them growing well, get those flowers out, and then if you've got a place that you really want to present it, once the flowers are all out, you can then put it in that sunny you can then put it in that particular spot where you want to keep them, because once the flowers are out, they'll stay happy like that with less light for as long as you want. They're going to be out for a few weeks depending on the amount of heat and light you have in the house. But you could start by putting it in a sunny spot, then put it where you want it later on once the flowers are out. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. Why not give it a go yourself and send me some pictures on Instagram at Houseplant Hacks. I'm always interested to see your projects of your own. You can do this with all sorts of bulbs, as I said. You can do this with daffodils, with different sized pots, with other winter flowering bulbs. You can really let your imagination run wild. It's a fun project. It's a quick project with very quick results as well, which is what I like. All right, that pretty much wraps it up for this one. Please give it a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Subscribe for more houseplant related videos coming along very soon. I'm going to get in the warm because I'm freezing cold, and I'll catch you very soon on another video. Bye for now.